morning or afternoon or evening, wherever it is for you guys. Snark with Snark's Domain here. Today we are opening the card up and changing out the putty. So I tried my best to get UTP-8 to work down at the extreme thin layer of 0.1 needed for this card with the 1.6 millimeter shims, and it didn't work out. So we're going to swap to a finer grain putty, which is Halnziye HY256. We're going to see how that does. It doesn't have as large of particle size for the additives, but you can see, right, we didn't get good core contact with the paste. So we were close, but it's just not going to work. So we're swapping the putty today. And yeah, let's pop these guys off. I guess I'm going to need to get gloves on right away here. Just one moment. So it looks like I'll be going on a job probably tomorrow or the next day. Most likely the next day, but we'll see how that all works out. Yeah, we're going to scrape off the UTP-8 and we'll see if it's still squishy after the extreme pressure I put it under. The memory temps looked great when I got into Windows, but the core and the hotspot weren't too happy. So I'd recommend anyone that's going to plan to use shims to yeah, I would pick a shim size and a putty that you think are going to be a good combo, and hopefully we'll test a bunch of those out and find what would work for like a minimum putty layer for each putty, and then that way you can kind of use that information. We know the UTP-8 will work with layers as thin as 0.4. I think it'll probably work even down to 0.2, but we have to test that out. I need to get other thicknesses of shims, either cut or buy material for. I do like those nitride shims, and they do come in a few different thicknesses, so we'll get some more of those ordered up. See how they do. We will also test paste. I don't think we'll test paste with the thinner shims. We're going to test paste with the 1.6s. There's no point in using a thinner shim than 1.6 if you're going to use paste. So whenever you get putty where you're like scraping off little bits, you just sort of squish it back together. Part cleaned up here. If you cut a Q-tip on a 45-degree angle to get to 2 halves, it works really nice to use as like basically a soft toothpick, just to get into those small little crevices. I find it works pretty well for cleaning. You could also use a brush too, but I don't really want to use tons of isopropyl on this card right now, because we do have the conformal coating on there. So ideally we can just leave that alone for the most part. Because the more you scrub the conformal coating, at least the one that I use with isopropyl, it'll start to come off, which is good because you might want to have that ability in the future if you wanted to do any like repairs on the card or whatever. It gives you that option. Okay, that is pretty clean. I'll just give it a little bit of a wipe here with one of these. And we're also going to clean up these shims a little bit too. make sure the shims have both sides cleaned off from the previous putty contact. I don't like mixing putties personally. On a card you can have them in different spaces, but I wouldn't plus we don't want any of the particulates or the powders from the UTP-8 to still be on there, because they are most likely a larger size than the boosting powders that are going to be in HY256. Okay, let's put on some paste on the core. Just going to clean my hands a little bit. Running low on isopropyl again. I do, excuse me, I do tend to go through quite a bit of the stuff. So the reason why we're switching to this stuff particularly is you can make it super thin, and it still holds together. So I think it's going to be the ideal putty, while still maintaining like fairly high performance on the chart. You'll find that a lot of the other, like the top end putties, whether it's Honeywell HT 10,000, Layered T Putty 607, the 910 stuff, the Honda putties, they're all going to have that like a grainy texture as well. And that's because putties need to basically use different particle sizes to like achieve densification, which is basically having like, you know, a larger particle powder as filler, right? The least amount of silicone oil base needed. And then the gaps between those, we'll call them balls, they'll fill in with like a size down and so on to eliminate the gaps. Now, one thing that increases the viscosity, it makes it a stiffer putty, but it also boosts performance, which is the end goal of densification, which I didn't used to know what that was until I saw a YouTube video where there was a guy making his own thermal paste, which I thought was pretty cool. So just like we were troubleshooting last night, I'm going to use tiny little putty balls, and that should squish nicely for us. These aren't even balls, they're just blobs. But that's okay, it's all gonna spread out pretty good for us once we get the shims on there. They'll become flat little pancakes. And once I get this on there, I gotta go do some family stuff for a few hours, but hopefully I'll be able to get this on the test bench before I gotta leave. If not, I'll do it when I come back. Alright, let's put these shims in place. I'm still pressing pretty hard, but I can see I'm getting that putty to even that small amount is still squishing out, is still more than enough for making good contact. And we won't need to clean very much of it up. The reason why I like the idea of using a putty with shims as opposed to a paste. Pastes are, they can go much thinner, of course, but they are designed to be somewhat like liquidy. And so they have a higher percentage of silicone oil or whatever oil or base fluid they're using as a carrier fluid. Whereas a putty, it's not trying to be liquid, so it's going to have a denser makeup of it, which is great for filling gaps. But when it comes to shims, the gap is pretty tiny. But a paste, you know, if you're cooking it, it does have the ability to, like, you know, pump out or even dry for some pastes. Just depends on the paste. Whereas a putty is not going to have that, like, pump out effect on it. So that's pretty good for putting the shims on. Now we'll just trim it up a little bit and put some putty on the top surface, and we'll see if we get it fully compressed this time, and hopefully some good core contact with the paste. You know, in my previous testing with the obsolete chart, it's unfortunate that back then I was only doing the ETC hash testing, because it's not great at finding a flaw in the shim application. Like, we were already seeing slightly higher core temps with TH949-1 and the 1.6mm shims on this card, and that was non-core intensive. So if we had gone to test it out with furhter, I'm sure we would have seen significantly higher and basically like not ideal temperatures. So I'm just going to dab a little coating of this stuff on there just so it sticks a little bit better. The copper is not the easiest surface to get putty to stick to, but this stuff is proving to lay down a nice little layer of film, so I think it's going to work out okay. Yeah, I think this is the almost, well, I guess, well, I shouldn't talk too soon, but this is probably going to be an ideal putty for use with shims. We'll also test this, if this works out with these shims, we'll see how it does performance-wise. We'll also put it on the aluminum nitride shims and see how it does there. And see how much of a performance difference there is between UTP-8 with the shims versus this stuff with the shims. I don't think there's going to be that much of a bottleneck with this putty. This does perform better on the chart than TGPP10, and that used to be the putty I used with shims fairly regularly, with good effect, good compressibility. So we're going to see, but I think, hey Francesco, how's it going? Good to see you, man. You're the first person to say anything other than me. I've just been talking to myself. That's okay. I don't mind. This is just as much for future viewers as it is for current ones. So okay, so I'm using little tiny putty blobs. I was gonna say balls, but it's really not. It's just blobs. And I used about that same size underneath, and it's still squished out with lots. I had to trim off the excess, so there'll be a little bit that squishes out of this one. No big deal. This is a much softer putty, and it does have a finer, like a smoother texture to it. So it's a finer grain, which should allow us to compress it a lot better. I'm hoping. Almost guaranteed. Oh, and I actually have to go in like 5 minutes. So, yeah, we'll reshape the TGPP10. Also gotta buy some more gloves. We're getting low. So round. Yeah, it's more like the opposite of round. They're very blotchy blobs of putty. Realize that using little balls like this is going to make it easier to, initially, easier to compress. So I don't have to exert as much force for as long, which is nice. Now I'm just looking for a way to clean this stuff up here. Get some IPA. One of these guys. I need to get another roll of paper towel down here. It's kind of shocking how many like Q-tips and wipes and stuff I go through. I wonder what the garbage man thinks. Must be doing something in that house. Just playing video card mechanic, that's what we're doing. Alright, so we have reshaped the TGPP10. We've got MX4 on the core. We swapped the putty around for the shims. And let's go for compression here. Do a tilt test. It's all kind of holding together, but we're going to grab that little putty. And I'll tuck the cables in. Man, those cables are not going to last much longer. I can already see it's bending at the wire. Gotta get this. Sorry. Let's see. Oh, I'm struggling so much to find this screw today. There we go. That took a little bit. It's yeah, it's gonna work. Okay, so we got the card back together partially here. We'll start these screws and then we'll apply some compression. Like I said, I'm hoping this stuff is the solution for using with these shims. I think it will be. If not, we could try maybe some JE8100. I would kind of like to, for shims, because you guys aren't going to need much putty to use with the shims. Like, I'm thinking like 10 grams would be lots of putty. Kind of like, I don't think any of the large manufacturer ones from like DigiKey and Mauser are going to be used much. You guys are going to want to get like a little container of putty somewhere. Maybe J8100, we'll probably include that with our tests. I think that'll also be soft enough to do ideal compression. So I've got the screws started. Just looking at the putty myself here, which maybe I'll show you guys. We'll just get this focused here. So you can see it's not squished yet, but it's partially squished, and I'm gonna lay it down and we're gonna press down on it a bit more. Bring that in focus. So I'm just gonna apply relatively even pressure left and right and hold. It seems to be squishing nice. It's starting to come out the edge of the copper. Just gonna press a bit more. You still have to press quite a bit. Shims are risky this way, with applying more pressure than you would normally need to. And the thicker the shim, the more pressure you have to apply. So the stiffer the putty, the more pressure. But again, some putties are not going to be suitable for maxing out the shim thickness. So just keep that in mind. You're better off going with a smaller shim than you would like to if you're going to use putty. Finish tightening the screws, and then I've got to go. My wife's probably looking for me right now. But we'll just get this buttoned up really quick, and then I'll have to plug it in once I come back in like 2 hours. That's okay, we will get testing on this started today, as long as the core is happy. I'm thinking it will be this time.
But I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before the new. Rewind, take it out of cue. Innocence can be a young man's game.
Alright guys, that is the card back together. I'll see if we've got enough pressure. With I'll update you guys later this afternoon once I get a chance to test this thing out, but yeah, that was us changing out the putty on these shims. That is it for this stream. I know it was a short one, but figured I might as well document the troubleshooting process. If you start getting into using shims, you might have to do something like this where you're changing stuff around, playing with the thickness. It does take a bit more work and effort and trial and error than just using putty. There's also the added risk of conducting electricity with the copper shims. I do have conformal coating on there, which I'll have to check how good that's holding up. But yeah, I will catch you guys maybe later this afternoon. Thanks very much for tuning in. Yeah, I will catch you.